to the Pre-Health Integrative Holistic and Quantum Club's monthly learning opportunity presentation of a nutritionist panel discussion featuring Christina Barth and Danielle Lafata. We are the Pre-Health Integrative Holistic and Quantum Club is an online club, and we also have physical in-person meetings, but right now, because of COVID, we're only doing online meetings. So we have a bit of an advantage because we've actually been 100% online from the beginning. So we're comfortable with this Zoom thing, although I'm still learning all the cool things that Zoom can do. But the club, basically what we do, we provide ASU undergrad and grad students and even alumni. We actually invite students from other colleges as well to give them access to the latest research about holistic and quantum medicine and integrative medicine. And we try to bring you local connections as well as those global connections because, you know, our students are all over the world. So we try to bring as many connections as we can to you in the integrative and alternative medicine fields. So we do these monthly learning opportunities, which you've signed on for this evening. And the whole idea of these is to bring more awareness about complementary and alternative medicine and really get a feel for what the career path is, for what you might be stepping into in your future as a part of this industry. And so every opportunity that we do, it's once a month. We try to do it on the fourth Tuesday of every month. We do have one meeting happening on the second Tuesday, and that's in November because the fourth Tuesday is actually the week of Thanksgiving. So we're moving it to earlier in November. But that's basically an opportunity for you to come and learn from these practitioners in person, or in this case, online. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Danielle and Christina. Ladies, who wants to go first?
Is there a question? Or are we introducing ourselves? Okay.
Sorry, speaker introduction. So you have like 2 or 3 minutes to give us an introduction of who you are, what you're up to in the nutrition world, and what you'd like to bring to the conversation tonight.
Great. I don't know. I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
Well, I've been a part of this club since, gosh, last year was when it first started. And so I was one of the officers, and I've stepped down as the primary officer. I'm not sure if Julia is going to make it tonight, but Julia is our primary officer. In terms of, I don't know, the nutrition world and where I kind of fit into it, I currently teach at ASU. So I teach nutrition, entrepreneurship, and getting into more health coaching as well. And I am actually in the process of moving. So I've been in Arizona since '97, and I'm making a big move. Tomorrow morning, I actually leave to go back to the East Coast, to Virginia. And I'm very fortunate that I can still continue working at ASU. So I'll be teaching primarily virtually now. And then I've always had my own little practice on the side. And I really don't have a specialty, but I really, I work with eating disorders, sports nutrition, kind of like holistic health, but more like integrative functional nutrition, and getting my Pilates certification right now. And I'm a yoga teacher. I taught yoga much more so in the past, but it's tough to juggle everything. So I've kind of stepped back from teaching yoga, and I love to practice yoga most days. And guess that's everything about me. But I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, Stephanie, for putting this together.
Thank you, Christina.
All right. My name's Danielle. I've been out in Arizona since 2008, although I am in Michigan right now, staying out of that Arizona heat. So my background is in sports dietetics, and now I'm also moving into the holistic, integrative, and functional nutrition world like Chrissy. And I guess sports, nutrition, and digestive issues, food sensitivities, I'm kind of moving into a specialty there. So that's my background. It's brief.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay. So I have a list of about 6 questions, and so I'm going to run through that list with you ladies first, and then we'll open it up to questions. But I do want to invite the room, if you'd like to pose a question to the group, to our panelists during this conversation, feel free to put it in the chat. So I'll be monitoring the chat as we're moving through this meeting, and actually, if you could also keep an eye on that chat for me and just like raise your hand if you see something. There's a raise your hand function. If you look in reactions down at the bottom, you can raise your hand and you can also clap. So there's a way to do that to kind of express your emotion during this meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and open that chat. Here we go. Okay, great. So this first section is about food as medicine. That's something that I'm really passionate about. I'm a nutrition major, and eventually I hope to be where you ladies are. But at this point, I just love talking to people about food and helping to support their journey. And I give them as many resources as I can as a lifestyle coach. So my first question is, what are the best foods you can eat? And I have a couple of like sub questions under this, but if you want to start with like just the best foods you can eat for optimal health, what do you think, ladies?
Do you want me to start, Chrissy, or do you want to go?
It doesn't matter. If you want to jump in, go ahead.
You know, I think it's kind of hard. I think it comes down to just a balance. But if we had to weight some foods, definitely something out of the fruit and vegetable, the plant category, for sure, right? You look at the diets like the Blue Zones diet and the Mediterranean diet, and they're, hugely, plant focused. And you're getting your fiber, your micronutrients, your antioxidants, polyphenols. So I would say I'd start there.
Plants, okay.
Plants.
And for me, I mean, as far as like what the best foods are, well, I definitely don't believe in deprivation. I think just learning from personal experience is why I became a dietitian. But I think all foods can fit into a healthy, balanced way of eating. I have to echo Danielle, though, by choosing plant foods, because we know there's so much new research coming out about gut health, and our health begins in the gut. And so it's about really feeding our good probiotic or the good gut bacteria in our guts, and they thrive off of like a lot of what Danielle was mentioning. So a lot of fiber foods, polyphenols, which is found in a lot of plant foods. So yeah, I think all foods in moderation, not depriving ourselves, but really emphasizing a lot of the fiber-rich foods for gut health.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Now, are there specific foods for stress relief that you two know about? Things that you can bring into your diet that can help with stress management?
Well, there's a lot of like interesting research coming out now about food and mood. And there's one particular diet called the MIND diet. So it kind of is a combination between like the DASH diet, which is the dietary approaches to stop hypertension, which is like a lot of like your produce, so like high potassium, calcium, magnesium, low sodium. So it's the DASH diet combined with, now I'm drawing a complete blank. Oh goodness, I'm so sorry. The anti-inflammatory diet. And so again, this combination is really a lot of plant foods, good, healthy, lean proteins, unsaturated fats, which are anti-inflammatory. But I think really when it comes to like mood, it's more about like, I think what also helps is maintaining blood sugar. So it's like eating the right combinations of nutrients throughout the day. So getting that fiber protein mix, not going longer than 5 hours between your meals, because then blood sugar starts to drop. You might get like a little bit like moody. But then there's also key nutrients that help with mood, like omega-3s, which are the omega-3 fatty acids, primarily from like fish, algae, and then plant sources like ground flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, vitamin D, which is also very important for mental health. Vitamin D is more of a hormone than it is a vitamin, where every cell in our body needs it. And I work in mental health. And so a lot of my clients that have depression, anxiety are actually deficient in vitamin D. I think about 50% of the population are deficient in vitamin D. And there's a huge correlation between vitamin D status and depression. Also, all your B vitamins are also important for mood as well. So B12, folate, and all that good stuff. So, I mean, diet is definitely important in overall mental wellness.
Totally agree.
Yeah,
Okay.
just to add on to that, Chrissy, everything, and then going back to the gut, right? Eating that plant-based or anti-inflammatory style, non-processed foods versus eating junk food. You do it for 2 days, eat junk food just all day long, and then switch for a couple days and eat clean and green, and you'll notice a difference in how you feel. And that could also be tied back around to the microbiome.
For sure. Okay, so then what about the best foods for weight loss? I mean, I know that managing your stress and maybe not bringing too many stressful activities into your life can make a big difference in your ability to lose weight because of the way that the body modulates those hormones. But are there specific foods that can help with weight loss, or maybe even certain diet patterns?
Well, going back to what Christy said earlier, managing your blood sugar levels. Again, I think it's going to come. I think the common theme we're talking about today are going to be plant-based foods, and then of course protein, and having that moderate amount of protein to help, because protein is satiating, and again, it also comes down to all this balance. So, and that's going to help to regulate your blood sugar levels. So, and inflammation, a lot of weight loss, a lot of times now, yeah, we know a calorie is not a calorie. Sure, for still some of us, we can lose a little bit of weight by just making a few tweaks to our diet, fine. But there are some of us, no, and that's just because of all the stress, the inflammation, insulin resistance. I have a client right now, he has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We can't get off a pound, but he's still eating sugar. He's drinking juice and, doing all the things that he shouldn't be doing with that. So, in a nutshell, that's where, I would start looking at that, where that inflammation is coming from and what foods help to decrease or combat inflammation. Your fruits, your vegetables, your good mono and polyunsaturated fats, right? Coming from avocado and olive oil and cold water fatty fish.
Okay. Great. So you mentioned processed foods. Our next question is actually about the worst foods that you can eat. So if you want to maybe just emphasize, let's talk about sugar a little bit. What does sugar do? Why should we avoid it?
Well, I think in terms of like the worst foods, it's a shame. I think that sugar gets a bad rap because sugar isn't the enemy. What's really surprising is that there's about maybe like 15, 20 preservatives that are banned in other countries, but we still put them in our food supply. Like high fructose corn syrup, for example, is one example. Artificial sweeteners, it really affects our gut microbiome, like we're talking about, and that can actually increase the risk of gaining weight. I think trans fatty acids that are artificial. So on the food label, it'll say partially hydrogenated and then some kind of oil or vegetable oil. And then usually if it's like a laundry list of ingredients on the back of a package, I would say toss it. Or if you can't pronounce the wording, I would toss it too. It's probably some kind of chemical. But in terms of sugar, I really don't pay too much attention to sugar. I mostly focus on what to eat more of. And by eating more of all those nutrient-rich foods, plant foods, people's taste buds start to change too. Because if you think about it, and working in mental health, I work with a lot of people that are recovering from alcoholism, and they crave sugar when they give up the alcohol because it's a similar type of release that they get from the alcohol as in the sugar, but it's also the whole gut flora. A lot of that unhealthy gut bacteria craves the alcohol, craves sugar. And then when you start feeding the gut with all the fiber foods, your cravings start to change too. But in terms of sugar, I mean, there are like better sources of sugar, like fruit, like fresh fruit, good whole grains. And then like, kind of what I like to encourage is like an 80-20 kind of guideline. 80% choose nutrient rich, 20% it's okay to go off a little bit. And if you're craving ice cream or you're craving a piece of pie, like have that, you know, honor that craving and have it. Because if you don't, you might go back and eat the whole entire pie, you know, which isn't good either. So I don't think sugar really is the enemy. I think it's just all this like other like processed foods that are just filled with like ingredients that are like that we shouldn't even be putting in our food. And it's a pretty difficult process too. I don't know if you all follow Dr. Mark Hyman, but he's a really interesting integrative functional medicine doctor. And he talks a lot about how it's really changing food policies because the food policy just like has such a huge hold on like what we sell in the grocery stores. And I hope it changes as a result of what we're going through right now. I mean, who knows, but it's really just changing the whole like food policy to get rid of all the junk that is in our food supply, unfortunately. It's a long-winded answer. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
No, but it's not easy, Chrissy, right? It's a complicated answer, and we vilified sugar, we vilified salt. You know, I do food sensitivity testing, and I have a doctor, you know, and friends, and like we'll do a food sensitivity test, and we look at cane sugar, honey, high fructose corn syrup, what's the other one? Honey, maple syrup. And so sometimes they're very low reactive in terms of an immune response or a gut response to maple syrup. And they're like, oh, I thought this was a detox. They're not on sugar. I'm like, they're going to be eating, you know, they're not going to be eating anywhere near what they would eat in packaged and processed food. And the first 2 weeks of this diet, maybe even 3, they're not eating anything out of a box. So it's something completely different. And I think it does. I think salt and sugar get vilified because of the fast food world and the packaged and processed foods. Because before the Industrial Revolution, people were eating sugar, they were eating honey, they were eating maple syrup, and they had no issues like we have now. So I know it's not that, I'm simplifying it, but it just goes to show it's just not those things.
Right, it's not just about the sugar. It's about processed foods and the additives. Yeah, absolutely. I've done a lot of research on all of those extra things that show up in the food. That's what my book is going to be about, actually, is all of those toxic things that show up in our food and environment, and why are we still using these things in our products that we're putting in or on our body, right? Right. Okay, so moving on to supplements and superfoods. What is your take on nutritional supplements and nutraceuticals?
Well, Chrissy and I both use them. I think I call it, I think Chrissy uses this term, smart supplementation. Mm-hmm. And I learned this term a long time ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago. Supplements should be, I like the term a complement better than a supplement. And even testing, not guessing. Chrissy and I use a micronutrient company called Spectracell to see what our clients need and help them to hone in on, okay, well, if you're going to take all these supplements, let's narrow it down and let's see what you need. So sure, there is something to it. They've also gotten bastardized, if I can use that word. But there are some really good companies out there with some really great research behind them and a purpose and a goal to help people improve their health, and they can do it. But I also consult for that company as well. And, I talk to practitioners on a weekly basis, and I definitely go over like therapeutic repletion protocols with them, but I try to remind myself to say in the beginning, I'm going to go over a therapeutic repletion protocol, though should still be working on lifestyle and other dietary factors in order to help them get to where they need to be.
Right. I know. I totally agree with that one.
Right, Chrissy?
Oh, totally, completely. Yeah. I mean, typically for people, I do recommend a good daily multivitamin mineral, a high quality one. And then to fill in the missing links or pieces, I recommend getting a really great blood tests like Spectracell, for example, where they can check your vitamin and mineral status, and then you supplement accordingly. But I think definitely a good daily multi, perhaps an omega-3 fatty acid supplement, a probiotic possibly as well. But then to really figure out additional supplements, I would first get a good baseline to see where you're currently at. Because I know so many people that over supplement, and it can be dangerous too, because supplements aren't regulated by the FDA. And I mean, and everything else is fortified in our food supply. So it's so easy to get in too much of one particular nutrient. So I would recommend taking that supplement test to see where you're at.
Okay. I want to take a quick minute and look at the chat. There's a couple questions posted here. How do you two feel about fasting? Paige said, I've heard there are a lot of beneficial downstream effects. I'm personally doing an intermittent fasting.
Go ahead, Chrissy.
I mean, I'm not an expert in fasting, and for me, I think it's an individualized thing. For me, I just cannot fast for the life of me. I can't even go more than 8 hours. I have to eat breakfast first thing in the morning. But there's different types of fasting. So there's the alternate day fasting, where you fast one day, you're off of it the next day. There's a 5-2 fasting, where you fast 5 days, you eat normally 5 days, you fast 2 days. And then the daily time restricted eating, which is maybe you go 12 hours for a fast. Like if you finish your dinner at 6, you don't eat the next day until 6 a.m. I think for different populations, they are seeing some positive results from fasting. Like I work with Alzheimer's patients. I work with a functional medicine doctor, where we have found, not through our own research, but there's a physician called Dr. Dale Bredesen. He's a phenomenal researcher, MD, PhD in Alzheimer's, and he wrote a book about how we can reverse Alzheimer's. And one way to do so is by fasting. And so they recommend between a 14 and 16 hour fast, especially if you have that APOE4 gene for Alzheimer's. 16-hour fasting is much more beneficial for you because it helps the brain kind of regenerate a little bit. But also other diseases where there's a lot of inflammation. So MS, arthritis, asthma, strokes. There's been some research that supports intermittent fasting for these particular types of diseases or conditions.
Okay. Anything to add, Danielle?
Yeah, same thing. There's a lot of great research on it. Finally, they're starting to get more research on humans. For the longest time, it was a lot on the rat model, and there was a lot of just rats and animals. There was a lot of hype around it. But at the end of the day, if you kind of look there, there was a ton of research around calorie restriction and fasting and how that could create this thing called, is it autophagy? Chrissy, this big word
so.
where it's cellular death. So to clear out the debris and the death of the cells. So, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
I am learning though, and Chrissy, I'm curious, we don't have to get into it now, maybe this is a side off conversation, but for us women, we have to be careful with fasting and intermittent fasting because it is a form of caloric restriction, and it puts a certain stress on us. So for those of us that are already under a ton of stress, whether it's environmental and other psychological, now we add the food, and now we're stressing our bodies and keeping away food. That might mess with some of us and our cycles if we're still, peri or premenopausal and whatnot. If for women, it's a little bit of a different beast than it is for men, is what I'm starting to learn, and I really want to dig deeper into it. Chrissy, have you heard that?
I've heard some things that's very similar to that too. Mm-hmm. But
so
then also go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say there's something out there, and I might be speaking. I don't like to say anything unless I fully know, but there is something out there. I just haven't had a chance to dive into it. Is that where? Yeah, Chrissy, sorry, what were you gonna?
No, there's something else about calorie restriction and how it helps prolong your life too. However, I don't know, if I'm depriving myself of eating a certain number of calories, I'm going to feel terrible. And I'm it's I don't know, I just can't do it. So I'm I'd rather eat what I want and, but there is some research out there. I think you mentioned earlier the blue zones, was it, Danielle? And I think that gentleman who wrote that book mentioned that too, about how there's certain populations who tend to cut back on their calories, and by doing so, they're able to prolong their life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Let's see. There's another question about calorie intake. So Bailey was asking, is keeping track of general calorie intake a healthy thing to do? And if it is, how do we go about determining that range of calories?
Well, I'm not a big calorie counter. I'm more about like portion awareness, proportion awareness. In terms of calories, I mean, women should not go below 1,200. Men shouldn't go below 1,600. Once you do so, you really you increase the risk of really hurting your metabolism. So I'm not really a calorie counter. I'm more about encouraging my patients or clients to just be more mindful about portions, proportions, and choosing more nutrient-rich foods, that whole 80-20 type of guideline.
Balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm same. I'll do a little bit of calorie counting with certain clients. Others, I do try to stay away from it. It also depends on the client. If they're into those numbers and it's more of that's just their mindset. I'm working with an engineer and they just need to know everything, and you know, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I always tell everybody my ultimate goal is really to get you away from that. Sure, I think we should have a working knowledge of it, but we should not be every single little thing, because that's just not how the body is designed or how the body works. And that's just not our food supply. And for the most part, we never really, again, going back to the days when we didn't have to worry about any of this stuff, we didn't need to do that. We ate to hunger, right? We started eating when we were, we stopped eating when we were full. So it's really getting people back to that intuitiveness when it comes to eating and understanding from, okay, I need this, I need to eat. And then that, right, then with all that, it goes back into the physiology and metabolically what's going on with us. Why are there misfiring of neurotransmitters and hormones and not helping us to, you know, shut those hunger or fullness cues on and off?
Okay. Does that answer your question, Bailey?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Carly asked, I feel like I've heard a lot of more girls having gut and inflammation issues. Is that true? And do you guys know why? Is it more of a female thing that women are having?
I don't know about female. I just know in general from what I've been seeing with everybody it's bad. It is so bad. I haven't really gotten a difference between, you know, female or male at least yet. And now maybe I'll keep a better eye out for it, but definitely all of us. And like, I talk about digestive issues with my clients. I'm sure Chrissy does too. I have them log their, you know, we get into a poop schedule and all this stuff. And they're always like, oh, wow, Danielle, we're going to get to know each other really well. It's like, yeah, we are. Because it's not okay. Like doctors back in the day are like, oh, if you haven't gone to the bathroom for, 1, 2, 3 days, no big deal. You're fine. No.
Oh.
No. And, it's so many of us, and I say that because right, Chrissy, like people nowadays are like, oh, I'm just gassy, I'm burpy. And like, that's just supposed to be normal. No, that's every now and then. Sure. But every day, every other day, there are a lot of us. And now even young kids are just constant. And it's just a lot of the junk we eat. And, we're learning that if we're not breastfed or we go through, C-section versus through the vaginal canal, we're going to pick up different bacteria that's going to determine our microbiome. And so, yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of poor gut, whether it might not all be leaky gut or this, but something is going on, some type of reflux. And so not all of it is this idea of leaky gut, but definitely some type of inflamed gut or something going on at the GI tract, either in the stomach or even in the mouth. I mean, the microbiome, it starts in the mouth. So I'm definitely seeing a lot. Right, Chrissy? Are you too?
Oh, definitely. I haven't really paid attention for like men versus women, but I think I read something about like autoimmune diseases affect more women than men. And I don't know if that's like due to hormones or the way that women handle stress. I mean, I have no idea. But I have read that women tend to be at a greater risk of autoimmune types of conditions.
Paige put a comment about the female inflammation. I read a paper last year arguing that since the female immune system evolved to basically be pregnant much more often than women are now, and to deal with the different fetal immune systems, that the female immune system is much more sensitive and prone to self-attack. That's an interesting paper. I'd love to read that, Paige.
Yeah, I'll try and find it. It was just a theory, obviously, but yeah, it said that since females have to deal with basically an invading immune system, and since we don't have to deal with it constantly because of birth control, that we're more prone to autoimmune diseases, things like that.
Interesting.
Really interesting. Very interesting.
Okay, so I'm going to get back to supplements. My next question was about supplements and nutraceuticals not being reviewed by the FDA. Can one of you explain why that is, why the FDA doesn't review these things?
Wasn't it from like, what was it? Like the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act? Was that what it was?
The DSHEA, Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, that was passed, I think, in 1994 by a senator out of Utah who is still in office, Warren Hatch, deregulated, because I believe he was with Amway or USANA, and he deregulated supplements. So it's not that the FDA doesn't, it's that they're just so underfunded and so deregulated that there's not a lot of follow up and follow through. They don't have the staff, they don't have the funding, and then they lost a lot of their power because of that Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. Okay. So they still do it, but it's like this much work.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know if there are any other organizations that are picking up the slack to look at these nutrients?
I always refer my clients to look at consumerlab.com because it's an organization that just checks for potency and purity of supplements. There's actually an omega-3 supplement that was a Costco brand that was tested by consumerlab.com. This is years ago, like probably over 10 years ago, where Consumer Lab found that there were I forget what exactly was in it, but like some type of like maybe mercury or something in it. Yeah, something like that. And so, I mean, really scary, but I would always recommend going to consumerlab.com just to double check and make sure that what you're taking is, has been tested for potency and purity. Or just doing your own research and looking at really good quality supplements. And there's a bunch of them out there, but usually you have to go through a healthcare provider to get them. I don't encourage going to like your pharmacy. I was a big Centrum taker. And then when I worked with one physician like years ago, when I became a dietitian, she really got me into supplements and thinking about be careful what you're taking. Because she did some kind of x-ray on one of her patients and who was taking Centrum, and the Centrum was still lodged in the person's GI tract. It wasn't being absorbed. And when you read the back of certain supplements, like Centrum, for example, I haven't read it for a while, maybe they've changed it, but there's a bunch of fillers, like dyes or artificial ingredients. I mean, really be careful what you take. And there's truth to you do pay for what you get, and Centrum's pretty cheap. And I just wouldn't waste your money on that. Yeah. So just be careful what you take and do your research on where you get your supplements from.
Yeah. To follow up with what Chrissy said, so even, USA Today, I remember because when I was working with athletes, we had to warn them, right? Everyone's like, oh, take this supplement, take this pill. And the stuff could be either advertently or inadvertently contaminated with a banned substance on the World Anti-Doping Agency list. And there was an article from USA Today, and I forget a couple, we would post all of where they would go into CVS and Walgreens, they would randomly pull stuff off the shelf and test everything. And it would say 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, and there was 5 when they actually tested the product. So I I strongly recommend my clients don't buy stuff off the shelves at the grocery stores. Maybe there are still a few, I think Solgar and Solar Ray, Nordic Naturals and Carlson's, I think they're fine, but otherwise all that other stuff that's on the shelf. And then Amazon, if you guys just Google Amazon supplements, last year this month, Amazon admitted to finding out that people were selling bogus supplements. So they were taking like a Designs for Health or like one of they call them professional lines or like a pure encapsulations, and they were changing out the labels and selling the supplement. So I tell everybody, don't buy your beauty products and do not buy your supplements on Amazon at all. And then also lastly for that is for sports, there is NSF certified for sport as well as informed choice, where they take their product in batch and they send it into these third-party companies and they pay a lot of money, and the company makes sure that what it says on the bottle is actually in the label, on the label is actually in the bottle, that there isn't any banned substances that would be and there's over 200 on the World Anti-Doping Agency list. And what's the third? Oh, they check for the three basic, and they check for heavy metals. And that's NSF certified for sport and informed choice. And it's a third-party testing.
Okay, so it is happening a little bit out there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit more than what was happening in the 90s.
Yeah. And then all the professional lines, I really do think they do that's why they're a little bit more expensive, like Designs for Health, Integrative Therapeutics, Thorne, Pure Encapsulations. I really do think that they follow all the rules. They just don't spend that extra money on that other stuff. But they do I've been in a few labs. There's a lab in Arizona. Chrissy, were you with me at that? There is a lab here in Arizona.
In Gilbert? Is it Gilbert?
I think it might be the one in
Yeah.
Gilbert.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was like one of my first, when I first moved out here. I think it was one of my first dietetics
Oh, sure.
meetings. But yeah, I mean, and this was just a little small lab here, and they were everything, or maybe they, did it all nice because we were coming through. But I mean, that place was great. But then my mentor, who for Spectracell, he says he's been to some places and he was like, there stuff's everywhere. I mean, you open up a door and they're just bins filled with product from all over the world, and it's just blowing everywhere. I mean, so there are, it's just, it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
Supplements.
Yeah, somebody told me that like in a similar facility like that, like there were like batteries that were found in some like supplement mix. I mean, it's so scary.
Oh,
but the one that was in Gilbert, I think it's like Arizona Nutrition. Yeah, something like that.
Arizona Nutritional Supply or something like that.
Yeah, it's a huge facility. I actually had the owner be a guest speaker in one of my classes years ago, and now he's like on the board for the company. But it's a phenomenal company. So just be careful where your supplements get manufactured, because it can be a scary thing.
Wow. So I want to kind of shift gears and talk about superfoods, because, superfoods are great for that nutrient density that we look for. Based on my own research, I know that eating like the dark leafy greens and seaweed and, supplementing my diet with those amazing spices like turmeric, these things can make a big difference. So what can you guys say about superfoods and how they can support our health?
I have to laugh because we have a colleague. I don't know if you know her, Danielle, but I'm drawing a blank on her name. Sharon. Oh gosh, she's a really funny lady. She's since retired, but she just cringes at the word superfood because she's like, all foods are super. And I was like, yeah, she's very, very much right about that. But I think there are certain foods that have more nutrients in them than others. So, again, whatever is good for gut health is going to be a superfood. So a lot of your plant foods, probiotics, fermented foods. So, as far as like one specific superfood, there's so many like phenomenal, like real whole foods out there.
Yeah. I agree with Prissy. It's hard to say, right? Because all foods have it's all whole foods that come from the ground, that are natural, not out of a box. They all have a lot of great properties, right? So if we think of our plants, right, the rainbow, and I know, you know, bananas get a bad rap, but they're part of a plant compounds called anthoxanthins. They're, you know, you got anthocyanin, cyano meaning blue, so that's your blueberries, your plums, and then xanthan is for the white pigment. So they still have antioxidants, you know, so there's still a lot of great properties. So I always, when I worked at Exos or Athletes Performance, and I think they got this from Patty at Tignum, Chrissy, the color man, and they would have like reds for cardiovascular health. Your white foods are to boost your immune system. Your purple and blue fruits and vegetables are for your microvasculature. So kind of looking at things like that, right? Your orange foods for your skin. And so kind of, yeah, so I have the same thing. I guess superfoods would be maybe more super categories. So plants and fermented foods.
Sure. My little brother's a beekeeper, and he talks all about the benefits of honey. And that's something that I've done a little research on, about like the bee superfoods and the cool things you can get from bees. But yeah, I know superfoods are an interesting discussion because it's basically just food.
Yes. But I get it, back in the day when superfood became a big deal. I think it was like right when I graduated, you know, over 15 years ago. But, you know, that's catchy for a magazine or whatnot, you know, to do, oh, what are the big superfoods, you know? Yeah, just to talk about your eggplant or your, you know, your cherry. It's like, you got to give it a sexy, fancy name.
There was a question that I missed from Carly. She said, I want to switch to a nutrition major or double major, but I have no idea about the jobs in the field. Could you please go over some career options? So switching gears a little bit about the opportunities in your field.
And this is for someone that wants to be a dietitian, or not so much a dietitian?
Carly, do you want to unmute yourself and talk about that?
Hi. I just really am interested in like the subject, but I don't really know much about, like, I would definitely nutrition or dietetics. I think both are interesting. I just don't really know a lot of the careers in both fields. Yeah.
Well, I know to be a dietitian, there's a basically like a process to get to become a dietitian, like going to a university that has a dietetic intern or the dietetic program that prepares you then to apply for a dietetic internship. That internship is a pretty, not stressful process, but it's a pretty challenging, competitive process that you have to apply to. Oftentimes you have to pay for your internship, and the internship is between 6 and 12 months long. I think now by the year, I think it's 2024, they're requiring, I think it's 2024, you must get a master's degree in to be a dietitian. And then many jobs out there require the RD credential. Like, for example, like if you wanted to work in a hospital, you need to have that RD credential. And then other specific areas require that RD credential. If you want to have your own business and be a nutritionist, I mean, I know a lot of people that go that route as well. Dietitians can also have their own business, but I think there's more opportunity to be a dietitian. I don't know if Danielle, you can comment on that, but I think there is more opportunity to be a dietitian. If I had to choose between being a dietitian or a nutritionist, I would choose the dietitian route because there are so many more doors for dietitians. I think it's really also like what kind of area that you want to work in, because I know when I became a dietitian back in 2004, there really weren't that many jobs available. And so I started my career working at the Mayo Clinic, which I loved. I learned a lot. And I always wanted to have my own business working with athletes and eating disorders. And back in those days, there was hardly any jobs available. So I just jumped right in and started my own little practice. And then, so I think, but nowadays there's so many great opportunities for dietitians.
Yeah, because I would say not all nutritionists are dietitians, but dietitians can be a dietitian and a nutritionist. So that would kind of be one way. And you get the training, I think, is, I can't say because I have my master's in nutrition and food science. So I'm technically a nutritionist and a dietitian. I did the two programs together, but then there's that certified nutrition specialist or certified nutrition CNC, CNC or CNS. It's a little bit different depending on, then you got to look into what school too you're wanting. So if you wanted to go into more of an integrative and holistic health, there are now more schools with that. Because I do say that our dietetics profession, we're really ingrained in that allopathic traditional way of working with things, and really they're kind of getting away from it, but there's a big fight to pull away from the food guide pyramid and doing all that. Because some of us that are more seasoned and veteran now, it's like, I don't know if I would say all that, but it is great because we learn about, the medical conditions and about the drugs that are being used. So you learn those things in labs, which is really important on either side, whether you're a dietitian or a clinical nutritionist. But yeah, if you want to work in a hospital, food service, long-term care facility, if you want to go into sports nutrition at a university or with a professional sports team, you need to be a registered dietitian. So you have a little bit more door opening. And then I would say, depending on and then there's so much. Do you want to go into culinary? Do you want to own your own business? I just said hospital, long-term care, food service. There are all these subcategories. So if you want to check out, I think you could go to eatright.org, and that's the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And to get ideas of other areas, you could look at their the dietetic practice groups. Like Chrissy and I belong to Nutrition and Entrepreneurs and Sports, Cardiovascular, and Wellness Dietitians, as well as DIFM, Dietetics and Integrative and Functional Medicine. But there's Culinary Dietetics, I don't
child
even
nutrition, behavioral health. Pretty much
Yeah.
everything, weight management, geriatrics. There's just the list is endless. It keeps on going
Yeah.
on.
The thing too with the registered dietitian is we're allowed to practice medical nutrition therapy. So if you want to work with people that have metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, you're covered under your license or your CDR registration, and then whatever individual state license you get to practice medical nutrition therapy. Whereas other clinical nutritionists, exercise physiologists, chiropractors, even though they do, technically they're not supposed to.
Okay. Let's see. There's another question. What would one eat for healthy hair, nails, and skin, specifically on a plant-based diet?
Ooh, can I take that one first, Chrissy?
Sure, go ahead.
I go right to the gut. There's so much with that gut microbiome. Get a stool test and start there to see what you need. Food sensitivities, that's kind of where I would start. What are your food sensitivities and what's going on at your gut, and what do we need to eliminate for a little bit, and then add back in. That's my first thought. So starting really taking that question, then just digging a little bit deeper and peeling that layer.
Okay. Any other thoughts, Chrissy?
Did you mention protein, Danielle? I was plugging in my computer. My power's going out.
No, I just talked about
Okay.
taking that question, but stepping back for a second and talking about food sensitivities and the gut microbiome, and peeling back that layer to looking at what's going on, right? Because what are things getting absorbed, what isn't getting absorbed, because that stuff's going to come out, through our skin.
Absolutely. I think, protein's also important. Vitamin C is important. But yeah, I think like what Danielle was saying, really finding what the root cause, if you are having any issues with hair, skin, and nails, looking at your gut health first. But collagen too, I've heard so many great things about collagen. I haven't taken it. I'm curious to try it, but that's also really good for hair, skin, and nails.
Interesting. I don't think collagen is a plant-based.
No, it's not. Sorry, it's not right.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so then moving on to detoxifying the body. We've talked a little bit about inflammation and all the other diseases that can come up because of our bodies holding on to these toxins, right? So let's talk about detox. How do we get these chemicals and bad things out of our body? We talked a little bit about fasting already. What do either of you know about juice cleansing? That's been ever since Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead came out. It's been wildly popular to do juice fasting.
Well, I mean, I think the body can naturally detox on its own. If we eat like a unprocessed or minimally processed diet, our bodies are meant to detox by themselves. I mean, that's the purpose of having a healthy liver. It naturally detoxifies. So I don't think you have to pay like so much money on like fancy detox diets and things of that sort. If you want to, incorporate some like great juices like veggie and fruit juices into your diet, I mean, that can fit. But I think going to the extreme measure of just drinking juice, I don't believe in that. I just think that really just maybe doing an elimination diet or an unprocessed type of diet would be a great place to start.
I second what Chrissy is saying. I don't get the juice cleanse thing, and if somebody can fill me in, I'm all ears. I'm open to it all. I don't get it. I tried it once. I went into this place and they gave this 220-pound 6'2" man a bunch of juice bottles, and they gave me, and I'm 5 foot, 105 pounds. And I was like, really? We're both going to do and drink the same amount of liquid and do the same thing? Like, there's no rhyme or there's like no science. I like a little bit of science or having a little bit of something to it. And then it's just so much. It's still a lot of sugar, the vegetables still have sugar in them, and you're removing all the fiber. And I see it again with that Spectracell, and Christy's probably seen this with the Spectracell micronutrient test. They can look at, the analyte. There's an analyte on there, and it can look at fructose sensitivity. So it looks at how well that enzyme that breaks down fructose is working. And people will be like, well, I eat healthy to them, and their fructose is, just in the tank. It's real bad. I'm like, well, do you juice? Oh yeah, I juice. I do celery juices. I'm like, no, it's still sugar. It's, hitting your body. So, and then, to add to that, I do food sensitivity testing. We also employ food sensitivity testing. And so to me, that's the detox. So we remove all the triggers and all the food that even wasn't tested. And you remove all that, and that's your detox. And I have clients, they go through the first 5 days. I've done it. I've done the test. I've removed these foods. I've gotten the shakes for a couple days, and I felt lightheaded. And then by day 6, I like it's weird. It's like this film is lifted up over me, and like I just wake up, and it's just amazing. But you go through a little bit of a detox period, but you're removing all the things that the immune system in the gut is like, I don't like you, you're foreign, when they're not. It's just the body's overwhelmed. So I would say there's some stuff out there that just doesn't make any sense anymore when we really think about it. But I think there are some things that we can do to maybe support our system to detox. But Chrissy's right. I mean, our body does a really good job at it. Could we support it? Yes. Is juicing a way? I don't know, because it's all sugar, and I don't know. And then you get some of the fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A. Well, they're not going to get absorbed because there's nothing, you've removed even the little bit of fat that might even be in that fruit or that vegetable. So you're not supposed to eat anything all day long. So how are you going to absorb those things?
All right.
Yeah.
You mentioned what's commonly called a health crisis, the feeling of what you feel after going into that detox period. Your body starts to release those chemicals and toxins from the fat cells and the muscle cells. Your body basically goes into a health crisis, and people tend to leave that detox protocol because of that experience. Like, they'll stop. Like, I feel like crap, I'm going to go back and get a hamburger and eat what I want to eat because this isn't making me feel any better. And I am always telling people, you've got to get past that health crisis. Get past it, and you'll get to a place where your eyes are shining and you're glowing. You feel so much better. So can we talk a little bit about that part, and what can you do to avoid that?
I think it really comes down to that like holistic approach to health and wellness. So it's looking at someone's nutrition intake, hydration, their sleep schedule, their quality of sleep. I mean, sleep is so important. Exercise, movement, stress management, all that plays together so well. I mean, everything's related to each other. So it's really about looking at that holistic approach to health and wellness.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I agree with everything that Chrissy said. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, when we first started talking about detox, you mentioned eating more clean. So I think what I've suggested with my coaching clients is like that the cleaner you eat, the more your body is going to get back to a baseline and work better. Just holistically, you will be healthier because you're giving your body enough nutrients to be balanced and to take better care of you, because your body does take care of you, right? So let's see. Any other questions? There was one back here. How do we pay attention to our blood sugar levels?
Well, I mean, you could go and get, there are monitors now. You can buy them anywhere. Go to CVS and you can start checking it. Easy things to do, though, are just paying attention to how you feel. You're getting sleepy after a meal. It could be food sensitivity. It could be that your blood sugar spiked and then it dipped. And that's where we want to have balance. We want to balance our meals throughout the day. We want to have a little bit of protein and a little bit of fat and a little bit of fiber definitely at our main meals, and not just, gone should be the days of just sitting down to a big bowl of pasta, with nothing else to it, right? And if that's going to happen, maybe a little bit of meat and making sure we have our side salad, and then just cut back on the pasta portion. So, and I guess it comes down to, that's what we do with diabetes education in ways of how to eat, is just balancing those meals throughout the day. So it's not just one big load and the body's like, it gets overworked and it just it's tired and it just can't do its job anymore.
Anything to add to that, Chrissy?
I agree. Yep. Mm-hmm. Exactly what she said, Danielle. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. And then there's a question about colon hydrotherapy. What are your thoughts on colon hydrotherapy for people that have been put years of waste in their gut and have issues with it?
I'm not familiar with colon hydrotherapy. Yeah.
Is it kind of like enemas, or like those right? It's there's another word for them, like a colonic.
Yeah. Well, colonics are a little bit different than the hydrotherapy. Hydrotherapy, they hook you up to a machine. And
it's water. It's like a water.
They put liquid into your colon and then pull whatever waste out of your colon. I've done it a few times. It's really interesting.
Okay, I've never done it, and I guess I don't know. I would, because the thought behind it makes sense of why we would want to do it and clean things out. However, don't forget, we're not cleaning the bad stuff out. We're also cleaning the good stuff out as well. So I don't know. And I tend to think, in some of the research that I've read, that it might be harmful depending on how compromised somebody is or what's going on. So could we do it a little bit better by doing a stool test, doing a food sensitivity test, eliminating a bunch of foods, getting the body so it can get regular again and get things out, and look at what bacteria, what pathogens, are there or not there, what yeast are there, short chain fatty acids, right? I mean, that's going to be big for the epithelial cells and their fuel in order to help support the probiotics and things of that nature. So, can we get the system to do itself? So, yeah, I'm not as well versed as I'd like to be on colonics or even colon hydrotherapy. I just know that there is, I understand both trains of thought on it.
Okay.
You know, that, yeah, I get it. You want to clear the stuff out, but are we doing on the other side? I don't know. Is that good? Is it too harsh? And are we clearing out the bad, the good and the bad? And now we might create a dysbiosis.
Right. Okay. So I came to the end of my questions, but I took a bunch of notes. So I was thinking about adding a couple of questions in here. For example, can you tell us a little bit more about the DASH diet and what that is?
Yep. So the DASH diet, it's an acronym that is short for the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So it's really meant to help people with high blood pressure. And so it really emphasizes foods that are low in, like basically low processed foods, more of the whole foods. So it's low in sodium, high in potassium. Potassium we find a lot of our fruits and vegetables, high in calcium, like low fat dairy products, green leafy vegetables. And yeah, so it's kind of like a really great anti-inflammatory type of way of eating. A lot of lean proteins, unsaturated fats that are more anti-inflammatory.
Okay.
And I think it was voted like one of the top, like, I hate saying diets, but one like top diet that is like a doable diet to follow, and it has great results. And I think that's because it's like a whole foods approach to just being healthy.
Yeah.
Real food.
Yeah, to add on to Chrissy, I think I read something too, like the most research around all the diets that are out there are the Mediterranean diet or way of eating lifestyle and DASH. And actually I didn't do a thesis, but because I did a master's of arts, my paper was on the DASH diet, and I was in the lab with the professor that was working on it. So, and I did all the dietary recalls. And yeah, I mean, all we did for some of these, and their diets it was so bad. They were eating fast food every single day. And the study that I was on, all we did was have them add 2 extra servings, maybe 3. It's been so long, I don't remember, of extra fruits and vegetables, and it decreased their blood pressure. They didn't change their salt intake at all, and that's just because of the potassium and a little bit of the magnesium, the other minerals. So again, right, salt's been so vilified, but is it really the salt, or is just because it's an imbalance of we don't get enough potassium, nor do we get magnesium. Right. So yeah, I read that like last year, a couple months ago, and I was like, oh, I did my paper on this, on the DASH. I didn't talk about it too much or hear about it too much for a while, but I guess in the last 15 years, they're still continuing to do research on it. And yeah, those 2 seem to be popping up as the top 2 best diets from a research and validation. And yeah, they're helpful and they're fulfilling and, they're balanced. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm wondering if you guys can share some of your resources. So you mentioned consumerlab.com. So it's just consumerlab.com, right?
Right.
That's easy. Solar Ray and Nordic Naturals. Are these websites? I know, do we have access to them as consumers to get them, or do we need to get them through a practitioner?
Solgar and Solar Ray, those are going to be over-the-counter supplements. So okay. Yeah, you can find them at CVS and Sprouts and Whole Foods.
Okay. And then you mentioned the World Anti-Doping List. Is that a website?
Yeah, WADA, W-A-D-A, World Anti-Doping Agency. So that's where you'll find all the hormones and steroids and things that are banned from that athletes cannot take, that are considered a banned substance that would get them suspended or released from a team.
Right, okay. And then you mentioned eatright.org, which I've been to a few times. That's a great resource. There's a ton of information on that site. Okay, can we talk a little bit about the elimination diet and what that looks like? I think that's a common thing for a lot of practitioners, and even a couple of doctors have recommended elimination diet. I know what it is, but could you ladies explain?
I know there's another really great website, and they have a really great elimination diet on their website, but I think you have to be a member to join, but it's definitely worthwhile. There's so much great handouts and things of that sort, but it's called the Institute of Functional Medicine, and Dr. Mark Hyman is a part of IFM. I think it's ifm.org, and they have just so many phenomenal resources there, and one is the elimination diet. And so with that, it's a very I don't want to say restrictive diet, but it's really steering clear of all the possible nutrients out there that might cause some type of negative response. So it's a lot of your whole foods, but I believe it's I should pull it up, I don't have it on me now, but it's a way of helping you figure out any kind of food reaction or sensitivity, as opposed to getting a test and seeing what your sensitivities are. You can just do the elimination diet and then figure it out on your own a little bit. So it's, yeah, I don't know if you know anything else about it, Danielle.
No, I do it we'll do it as like a group session at my doctor's office. He's got a whole great packet, and it's just, eliminating sugar and just processed foods, and in a way, it is generic, because then there's also the autoimmune protocol, right? That's also a type of elimination diet. Similar thing, a little bit different. I can't remember what some of the, I think on the autoimmune protocol, it doesn't allow soy, but on the elimination diet through IFM, they do allow certain soy products like whole tofu and whatnot, which in a way would make sense. The Asian, population has been eating it forever. Now, when we start, again, I use the word bastardize our food, right? We now we got soy hot dogs and soy cheese. Again, no, and all these laundry list of ingredients and chemicals. So if you want to eat some fermented foods like tofu and natto and what's the other fermented, tempeh, sure, that's great. So those are the two. What Kirsty was saying, those would be, it's just a way to look at, it gives them a little bit of structure in terms of what to remove, again, to remove those triggers that might be causing the breaches along the GI tract wall lining, and then also creating an immune response, because once those foods get in, they're broken down to their most smallest particles, most specifically proteins. The body then sees those proteins as either safe or foreign. And when you have developed all these food sensitivities, whether you've been exposed to some type of stress or taking certain medications that have destroyed that gut wall lining, or you've got a dysbiosis for whatever reason, we're missing short chain fatty acids, and now a safe food that might be no big deal, like a banana, or, it gets through and the body looks at it as foreign. And then, so you remove all that stuff, you calm the system down, try to seal everything back up, and then you do an oral challenge where you start to add foods back in. And if you notice a reaction as you're gradually, one day at a time, every other day, adding a new food, and you're like, oh gosh, I just had this, I don't know, apple, because maybe you removed it for 2 weeks and you got a headache. Well, maybe you need to remove that food, for a little while longer, or maybe that truly is going to be an issue for you. So I think the AIP and, the elimination diet by IFM, they focus on the main things like soy and eggs and
like gluten-free, dairy-free.
The major allergens, food sensitivities. And then I'll take that a little bit further, talking about the food sensitivity test that I do. I then do an elimination. So it's a blood test that looks at a bunch of different foods and chemicals. So we will remove everything but the safe foods, or like the low reactive foods, for 12 days, even foods that weren't tested, because it's a 50-50 chance. If it wasn't tested, it could be a trigger. So, and I've done that, and I like that, because I've had clients where they were doing the AIP autoimmune protocol, and they were like, I'm not feeling any better. We ran a food sensitivity test, and they were a red or very high to coconut. And the AIP protocol allows all sorts of coconut all day long, as much as you want. Well, when we did it, and then I know there's a lot of around food sensitivities. Well, if you eat it a lot, then it's also because that's going to test positive. But the test that I use is supposed to help to minimize those false positives, and it's more of not such an antibody reaction. You're always eating it. And then we did remove, they continued on their AIP diet because it wasn't as restrictive, because mine can be at times, and I can adjust it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they started feeling even better after removing some of those foods that were okay on the AIP diet, but then when they looked at their test, they were high on. So what I try to do too when I do my diet, that elimination diet and the oral challenge or the reintroduction schedule, because the idea is to get you back to eating all your high reactive foods, right? But we got to, seal that gut back up and calm the immune system. So that way, when you do eat it, the body doesn't look at it as a foreign invader anymore. It just goes about its business.
Okay, so then what can we do if we're feeling like maybe we should go see a practitioner? Should we sign up to go see you? Or are there other types of therapists that can help us get to the bottom of our physical problems? If we've got some gut problems or leaky gut or food sensitivities, like what would you suggest? Because I know that not all of us are in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think going to that ifm.org website would be a great place to start, because they have all different health professionals from all different backgrounds, from PAs, MDs, DOs, nurse practitioners, dietitians, health coaches, and working with somebody who has that integrative and functional approach to health and wellness. I know I had a friend recently ask me, because she has a history of thyroid cancer, and she just really wants to get a good overall assessment on kind of where she's at, her health and everything. And so I recommended meeting with a integrative and functional medicine practitioner, and because what they do is that they look at they're not trying to treat the symptoms, but they're trying to find out what's causing the symptoms. And so I think that ifm.org website would be a great place to start, to look for somebody who is trained in integrative and functional medicine as one place to start.
Yeah, and I just sent them, Chrissy, the integrative and functional DIFM's website. Integrative.
Oh, sure, that's great too. Mm-hmm.
I would have to say I have to be careful, because I did that. I was trying to help my aunt, and I was like, okay, this is getting a little bit too much. And I suspected she had SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And I was having a hard time, right? When you're with your family, you can't be a prophet in your own land. And so there were all these things coming up. And then I was like, well, also too, maybe we need some, the antibiotic. I can't prescribe that, right? As dietitians, we can't treat, we can't diagnose. And I found her a functional medicine doctor, totally did not talk about anything that we had been working with, whatever I found, and then gave her a completely different diet to do, then confused her even more, spent 5 minutes with her, didn't really understand everything that we've worked towards to get her to this place. And then same thing, I just have another client right now. He's gone through 8 different doctors. He's on his 4th gastroenterologist, 3 urologists, a sports med, a pediatrician, a general practitioner. No one can help him figure out what he wants or what's going on with him from his digestive issues. His mom found a functional GI doctor. So she went in, she showed him that we were doing the micronutrient test. He was like, okay, but he took him off one of my supplements where he was totally functionally deficient. And I was like, I don't understand that, but okay. And then he was like, well, he looked at the SIBO test, and the SIBO was slightly high for methane predominant gas or bacteria. I had 4 other practitioners look at it, and they all said it's not SIBO, but he's constipated. Constipation produces methane gas. Well, this doctor looked at it. He's like, well, I'm going to treat it as SIBO, and then put him on this very, very, very restrictive diet, the biphasic diet. Chrissy, I don't know if you have any.
I've never heard of that before. Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's by Dr. Nirala Jacoby. She's out of Australia.
Mm.
And so it combines the specific carbohydrate diet with the FODMAP diet.
Okay.
And then just gave him a packet and said, go on your way. no herbals, no rifaximin, no nothing. So they're calling me, they're freaked out. He's hungry. He's having pain. There's this, there's that. They finally did the stool test that I sent. Sorry if I'm boring you guys, but I'm just saying I have not had the best luck with functional medicine doctors.
Wow.
Chrissy, I've heard her story. She works with some great ones. She's had some good ones. I have not. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's in my aura. So I gave them this stool test to do back in January. They finally did it in July. It comes back. He's got H. pylori. She gives it to the functional GI doctor. He looks at it and he's like, oh, well, I don't know this test. I don't see anything on here. Do my stool test.
Oh my goodness, a poor patient.
Is in pain. They came to you after 8 doctors. You told them that you wanted to wait to see the stool test. She sent you the results. You didn't even look at it before the consult with them. And it's clearly, so I talked to 2 other practitioners just to make sure that I know what I'm doing. And they both said it's H. pylori. That's why the opportunistic bacteria are high. I don't know. So we still have to be careful. I have not had the best success. So
yeah, I refer to 2 functional medicine doctors. Actually, one's in Phoenix, one's in Scottsdale, and I know them, but I can only imagine referring somebody just out into the blue of like, who knows who they're really working with, and oh my goodness, yeah, that's a headache.
And I mean, I have a great functional team in Scottsdale yet, but where I have a client in Michigan because I do virtual.
Sure. Yeah.
So I have a client in Michigan, so they couldn't see, and then my other client, both my clients were in Michigan where and this one functional GI doc, when she said that, I was like, oh, great. I want their contact information. I want to make a connection. I want to try to help. And then after I hear all this, I didn't even get a chance to reach out to them. I'm like, I'm not reaching out to this guy. Like, there's nothing functional about what you did at all. You just hand them a diet and say, go on your way. And like, no, I don't know. So yeah, still just with anything. Sorry, guys.
that was great.
It's tough to find a good practitioner. It's true.
Yeah. Good. So then, like, what would you do to vet the practitioner as a nutritionist or a dietitian? Like, can you refer people to these doctors without meeting them? Or, like, do you interview them? Do you go meet with them in person? Like, have a Zoom meeting with them and ask them all kind of questions? Like, what do you think would be the best way to find a good practitioner who knows what they're doing?
Well, I mean, like just recently I met with this one lady. She's a functional medicine doctor in the Newport News, Virginia area, which is where I'm moving close by. And I reached out to her because she has a similar specialty in what she does as what I do. And so she works with Alzheimer's patients that are looking to reverse their cognitive decline. And so I just met with her when I went back there last summer, and we got to talking, and I kind of was like interviewing her to kind of learn more about what she does. And I'm actually going to see her for me just because she's a great functional medicine doctor. But I found her from ifm.org, but only I was fortunate enough to actually meet her when I went back to Virginia because I'm going to be living in that area. But for someone that doesn't, I would say try to give them a phone call or set up a meeting over the phone or Zoom or something of that sort would be helpful, I think.
Yeah.
And with my experience and with what I know, I always say start with the dietitian, and especially on the Integrative RD site, the DIFM site first, because dietitians, they're just a different breed, and they will work their butts off to try to figure out what is wrong with you and how to help. I mean, I am on boards on Facebook all the time, and I got this client. I mean, they do not stop. I don't know about, I wouldn't stop. I was like, okay, I want to know what's going on with this kid. It has been a lot of work, but I'm also learning. But I'm not going to stop until I'm not going to take. And they went to a bunch of doctors because I kept saying, I wouldn't take that for an answer. Maybe go to this doctor, see if you can get, no, there's got to be something there, right? I sent them the stool test in January. So I don't know. Part of me says, start with the dietitian, because then if they can't, help, they'll find. And now I'm learning. At the time, I didn't have all these groups that I knew about. So now I'll say, hey, anybody have a doctor that they work with in this state before I go
trust, right?
Yeah, I'll ask my colleagues first now before I go on those sites and say, oh yeah. But I really think a lot of the dietitians, they won't stop. They really want to find a reason how to help. And a lot of doctors, they are a little bit more busy because they see patients. It's like, that cattle farm. So they don't have the time to spend to do the research and really dig deep on everything. Whereas we do, or we make the time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've made it to 8:20, and I think we can unwind and kind of come to a close here. So any final thoughts before we let this group get back to their lives and perhaps in Amber's case, go crash?
And Danielle too, because it's like
Yeah,
11
Yeah,
o'clock
that's
there.
right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
30 for me too.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Wow.
Okay.
I
Final
just say, for me, I just say like, what's like Michael Pollan has so many great quotes, and I forget, I'm drawing a blank, I'm falling asleep, but I'm just like moving and everything. But and he says something about like something like eat plants, not too much, something like that. Just like really like that, the whole foods approach to like health and wellness, and again, it's more that like that holistic approach. So yes, nutrition is important, but so is movement or exercise, mindfulness-based activities, managing your stress, getting enough sleep, which I can do better with that, just staying well hydrated. I mean, all those things are just they're just a very like holistic approach to health and wellness.
Yep. Yeah. Great, Chrissy. Great points.
Okay. Danielle, any final thoughts?
No, Christy said it really well. It comes
Danielle
down,
wants to go to bed now.
no, I'm out by. No, it's just I don't think it's as difficult as what we're making it, but we have all the marketing, all the big food, all the big pharma that are constantly throwing wrenches in our wheels, and they're making it hard for us to make the better decisions. And then also too, nutrition has become the Wild West, so you can go online, you can find out whatever you want to find out. And that's also, the web is great, but it's also really, really bad sometimes, because you can get yourself stuck into something that, you got people talking about stuff that they got no business talking about. So
It's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. If you're not a member of our club and you'd like to learn more, we are an ASU club, and we're on Sun Devil Sync. So if you're an ASU student, you can find us there. If you're not an ASU student and you found this meeting, then you can actually find us on the social medias too. So we're on Facebook under the Pre-Health Integrative Holistic and Quantum Club. You can find us under PHIHQ, I believe is the club acronym for the Facebook group. You can also find us on Instagram, PHIHQ Club ASU. So if you want to keep following us, I encourage you to keep coming back and joining us for the next learning opportunity. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Good
Good night.